Hello, homies. I just had to add that in there for you. Many of you don't know, but usually when I record, I have our two dogs and one of our cats lying at my feet. And our beautiful little ginger cat has just been lying here with me, purring his head off. And I just had to include that little audio clip for you. So today we speak with homeopath and educator Mary Ellis in the UK, who is the course director of 3 different homeopathic schools, the Southern College, the Midlands College, and the Iceland School. And she is the Chair of Homeopathy Training, which is all the colleges of the UK who meet to raise the level of education in homeopathy. She is also a trustee on Homeopathy Action Trust and the representative of this in the 4-H group. Now, we mentioned 4-H towards the end of the episode, and they have a wonderful free app, which I want to encourage all of you to go and download. It's very helpful with your home prescribing, giving you information on various remedies, as well as which remedies to use for various conditions. You can find it by searching Homeopathy UK in the App Store. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout podcast, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now, your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and welcome back to Homeopathy Hangouts. Today, we get to hang with homeopath and educator Mary Ellis, all the way from the UK. Welcome, Mary.
Hello, nice to meet you, and thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure. Now, you're going to be talking about a topic today that's very close to my heart, homeopathic education. And hopefully we're going to be inspiring lots of new future homeopaths listening to this episode. But before we get into it, can you tell our listeners a little bit about how you first discovered homeopathy?
Certainly. Like many people, I found homeopathy via my children. I just had my second son, and my first son, who was 3, had a cough at night constantly. And the doctors had prescribed Ventolin syrup. And for some reason, I didn't like giving it to him. So I started working just part-time at a chiropractor's office where there was a homeopath. And I just chatted to her and I said, "Can you help?" So I took him to see her. And 2 pills later, his cough was gone. So for me, that was like, wow. And then I hadn't wanted to do anything with my youngest son, vaccinate or anything like that. I wanted to try and keep it natural. So I started to see her for both children. And then I had a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome. So both my children were IVF, and I was told it was incurable and that was it. So I asked her if she could help me. And I saw her for 3 years. And at the end of it, my polycystic ovaries were normal. So that really just sparked everything, and I got more and more interested, and I'm a bit of a bookie, and I read everything. I didn't know about homeopathic first aid courses at the time. I wish I had, because I would have definitely gone along one. And it was a few years later, when things were happening, I decided to train as a homeopath, a bit spontaneously. I thought about it on the Wednesday, I phoned up, and I started on Saturday. So
Wow.
Bit of my life story. I jump into things last minute, but it's worked well for me.
Same here. It's worked well for me too. And then how did you go from studying homeopathy to now owning 3 colleges?
Yeah, so it took me a while to train, because I'd started a business, a recruitment business, at the same time as I started to train, which was a bit mad. I was also a single parent at the time, and it just got a bit too much. So I took a 2-year break, moved, and then met somebody who was in training as a homeopath at the college I'd gone to, who just kept saying to me, "You have to go back, you have to go back." So I did, but to a different college. And then I qualified, and I gave up my recruitment business because that was it for me. I just wanted to be a homeopath. I was like an enthusiastic bunny, just wanting to treat everybody. And then my old college was selling their college. They were closing. But that didn't work out for me, but that set the seed. And so I just sat there and thought, why not open one myself? Which was a bit mad, because I had never done any teaching. I hadn't set up a college, but I had set up a recruitment business. So I thought, I can do it. And I had several patients who all wanted to train. So that's what we did. We found a premises, we set up the course, and we started. And after a few years, I have had a link with Iceland for over 45 years. I've had friends there and I've been visiting. And via Facebook, I met homeopaths in Iceland. And so when I was over there, I met some homeopaths and we started chatting. And the college, which had been my old college, had closed down. So I thought this was a wonderful opportunity. It gets me a chance to go to Iceland a lot, restart the homeopathic community there. And I found a wonderful homeopath, Tina, who helped me start it. So that's been going for several years now. And then just recently, we've started the Malvern College. And that was from a colleague who had the Birmingham College, and that had closed down. And that was tragic, hearing so many colleges close down. So I just sort of said, do you want me to restart it? But we moved from Birmingham to Malvern because it's beautiful. And that started in November. So we had quite good intake from there.
That's incredible. It is very sad when you talk about these colleges closing. What do you think the homeopathic education scene has been like over the past few decades, maybe? Just run us through that, and where do you think it's going to at the moment?
I think it's a bit tricky. I think the people who started the colleges are getting to retirement age and the numbers dropped. And it's like any business. When you have a huge intake and then it goes very small, it's a bit of a worry. Whereas I always thought if I have one student, I'm doing fine because we are small colleges, which we actually quite like, but we haven't got that many outlays. So I can just start them up. I am a bit enthusiastic, and I think a lot of people are getting tired. We need fresh blood, so to speak. We need younger homeopaths coming in and restarting this education again, because it is older people who want to retire, and there didn't seem to be anybody who wanted to carry the torch forward. I think that's changing. Robert Davidson, who I trained with, always talked about homeopathic warriors. And I like that title. And I think we are a bit homeopathic warriors and that we're going ahead with that torch. And I know a lot of our students, we have a training program where we can train them into being tutors. Because when I qualified, you couldn't get a job as a tutor without experience. Whereas, we start off with a mentoring program. So the graduates become mentors to the student. Then they start doing a bit of the polycrest, a bit of the first aid, and then carry on. So they then get into a teaching program. And as chair of homeopathy training, which is in the UK, all the colleges meet. It's been going for about 20 years now, and talk about the progression of homeopathic education and improving it all the time. And we're in the process of setting up an education for tutors. So teaching them how to be tutors of homeopathy, because it's not like any other course. So that's something that we're in the process of doing. And I think that will make a big difference in the future.
That's incredible. And who is your typical student? Is there such a thing?
No. I would like younger people to come on board, but it tends to be from early 30s up until 60s. So we do have some older students, and I think I intend to be doing this into my 90s.
Yes, same.
So, I'm 60 in a couple of weeks. So, but I still feel like I've got a lot of enthusiasm. So that tends to be what we have. But I would like, if possible, younger people to think of it as a career, because it is a career. You can make a living from this. And I think a few years ago, that was the story that people used to say was, you can't make a living as a homeopath. Yes, you can. And you can make a good living as a homeopath.
Absolutely. I agree. And especially with COVID at the moment, I mean, you can maybe talk to our listeners about how the role, how the homeopath's job has changed. And certainly you've said that you've been so much busier. I have as well. And many of my colleagues have too. Maybe have a talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I think, renting a room and trying to find patients and paying out all that money, which I've never thought was a great idea. Or if you worked from home, again, that has its problems. But with COVID and Zoom, which everybody, we used it a bit, didn't we? I think Zoom or Skype. Skype wasn't that brilliant. Yeah. But since then, it's just, you don't have to move from your room. You can see patients one after the other. It's just been brilliant. And I think it's the way forward because I did have patients from across the world anyway, especially some in Iceland, some in the States and Europe. But now I can see from anywhere, which is great. So
it's a great career choice because you're not affected by lockdowns or anything else. All you need is your computer and an internet connection and you're ready to go. So it really is the career for the future. I just want to pipe in something there about, homeopaths. We typically discover homeopathy when we have children, and absolutely that tends to be a story through the banks. That is how we discover it. And then, of course, we have little kiddies, so we don't get to study straight away quite often. It takes us a little while. So by the time we're done with our studies, often we're in our, I was mid-30s, and, often people are much older when they first start with homeopathy. The other thing is, I think if you were to just go straight into homeopathy as like a 18 or a 20-year-old, it can be tricky because you do need that life experience. Now, because you're going to be seeing people from all sorts of walks of life and you really need to be able to relate to them. So sometimes having that life experience helps. But I would never, ever, ever see that as a deterrent for a young person to get into homeopathy, because at our clinic, we've got two sisters, 19 and 20-year-old sisters, and they've come to see me, and they've seen me in clinic, and they've seen how busy I am and what a great career choice it is. So they did consider becoming homeopaths. And I said to them, you don't necessarily need that life experience. You could actually study as a 18, 19, 20-year-old and then just go straight into a children's ear, nose, and throat clinic. So you're just dealing with ear, nose, and throat. You don't have to do the anxiety, the depression, the PCOS, all the other complex conditions. Just focus on ear, nose, and throat, and you will have a thriving clinic, because there are so many children suffering with that, and so many parents seeing pediatrician after pediatrician and not getting answers. So don't let age put you off at all.
I totally agree. And I think the people who are interested in homeopathy, even youngsters, I think there's a certain type of person who's quite exploring, looking at different things. They're not just looking at a fast buck, which, I was in recruitment, that's what your job was. So they're a bit more, it's not the word evolved, but more mature in attitude. So I think it's a really good career. I do, even at a youngster. I think 25 is a really good age. Absolutely. Because you've had some life experience. You might have been to uni, but it's not fulfilling enough and you want a career. And I think that's a really good age to start training.
I agree. And even if you start earlier and then end up doing professional development and say more advanced courses, by the time you're done, you'll probably be about 25, 26 anyway. So age definitely isn't a barrier.
No. And our course is 4 years. So even if you start at 25, and we do, one of the things that I think is really important in our college is that we do practice development, and that carries on. So we have a graduate program where we do CPD, so that you're constantly learning, because it can be a lonely business. But I think building up networks of other homeopaths and being involved still with the college and coming on courses and lectures is a really great way of being connected and developing your skills. I think it's not a great thing if you're sitting in your room talking to people and you don't explore anything else, because homeopathy is developing just like medicine is developing, and new things are coming in all the time, and science is catching up with homeopathy. So we're discovering more about how it works, and I just think it's so exciting. So,
it is.
Constantly learning is what keeps you going.
It really is, yeah. And it's such a wide variety. I mean, you could, if you were just to go and study a piece of materia medica, you can look into the mythology of this substance. You can look into the chemical compounds of it and any sort of folklore behind it, as well as, any toxicology reports and the proving. So it's just so multifaceted and multidimensional. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what makes it so interesting, I think.
Now, something you've done that really has intrigued me is the homeopathy supports refugees. Can you tell our listeners what that is and what that was and what it was?
There? Yes. So in 2000, I think it was 15, the end of 2015, some homeopaths, Rix Pike, went to Calais. She was invited to Calais in France because there was the jungle there, a big camp. And it was, pretty tragic. There was Médecins Sans Frontières helping out, but there wasn't a lot of help for the people. And I'd been looking at the news and thinking, I'd love to do something. So a group of us got together and we formed Homeopath Support Refugees, and we went out originally to Dunkirk, which was called the Forgotten Camp. I didn't even know there was a camp there. And the conditions were truly awful. I mean, you were knee deep in mud, and it was mostly families living in tented place in the mud, in the cold. They had 13 toilets with 4,000 people, and some of them didn't work, 3 shower blocks. They had scabies and TB and diarrhea and vomiting in these children. And we just went to see what we could do. There were other volunteers there that had made a woman's tent, which they allowed us into, where the women and children could go, where it was dry and warm. And we started treating people. And we went back every couple of weeks. And then when Dunkirk got demolished, because they kicked everybody else, it then went to Calais. And at the time we were going, there were 10,000 people in the camp, which was horrendous. But they made it a thriving community. I mean, it was wonderful what they did. And we saw 1,000 people in 2 days. There were about 5 of us, and we were surrounded, and we were just giving out remedies. And we had a wonderful response from the homeopaths here, who made up remedies for us and sent them, so that we had enough, because we gave, it tended to be the same sort of thing that you could give, because you had about 2 minutes of miming, and we had people who were interpreting for us to get what the symptoms were. So we had a snot chart with different colour phlegms that they could just point to, a poo chart. They would show us their skin. And so we had scabies mix, lung mix, cough mix, shock mix, trauma mix. So we did lots of mixes. So it wasn't classical homeopathy, because you just couldn't do that there. And we did that until the camp again was demolished. And then we went out for a few months more, but they were scattered, and it became quite dangerous and difficult to treat people, because we were going into the woods and there was a couple of us on our own, and it just got too difficult. So, and I did it for about 2 years and I was a bit worn out. So we stopped going. But then the Grenfell fire happened. And so a group of us started there, and that grew, and that's still going on a bit. COVID obviously knocked it. I wasn't so involved in that, but we carried it on. So it's still there for the next crisis that we could do something. But I have to say that the homeopaths as a community were wonderful in that rallying together and providing us with donations for remedies and tinctures and clothing and sleeping bags and things like that. They just didn't only do remedies. They were wonderful. So yeah, it was the best of times and the worst of times is how I describe it. But it made me hone my prescribing skills, because you had to be on it. But I think the homeopaths there, we worked really well as a team. If you had somebody talking to you and you're thinking, oh, what remedy? Somebody else would go, that's Kali Bic, or that's, something. And because we all seemed to be working in connection, and we could hear what was going on, and sometimes pop in with a remedy and you go, oh, of course it is. So wonderful time.
That's really incredible. And I really hope that homeopaths can start doing more of these across the world. We've got another interview with a lady who was with Homeopaths Without Borders, and they also did some incredible work in, was it the Honduras, I think? And
Haiti, wasn't it? Did they do Haiti?
Yeah, I think some of them went there as well. But it's beautiful seeing that. So great. So just back to the homeopathic education, what sort of topics can a student look forward to learning with you, and what sort of things do you think is important for them to learn in their training journey?
It's really interesting.
Hi homies, just a quick break in the episode to ask for your help. Producing this show takes a lot of time and money, and I would really appreciate your support so I can continue producing new episodes for you to enjoy. You can visit www.buymeacoffee.com/hangout to make a donation from as little as $5. Believe me, every little bit helps. I'd also like to invite you all to my Facebook group called Homeopathy Hangout, where we can continue the conversation. And for my Australian listeners, check out my amazing range of homeopathic kits, remedies, crystals, supplements, and more at www.eugeniekruger.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. Thanks for your time.
Because a lot of students come in and they've done the first aid course and they think it's just about remedies, and then they come in and it's the philosophy and the methodology. And we're a practical college, so we don't just teach one method, we teach several. So it's quite in depth, and it's wonderful to see them sort of blown away and then panicky, and then the light bulb moments as the course progresses. It tends to be the first year is like, I love it. It's just wonderful. Going into second years, I don't know anything and I can't do this. And then the third year, it's, I'm getting it. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that's why that does. And then the fourth year, it's just honing their skills. And we start to have clinics immediately. So from year one.
Wow.
And we get them to take cases because, as Robert Davidson said, who was my principal, you can't learn to fly a plane unless you get in the cockpit. So we have clinics online now, Zoom, and they take cases and we hold their hands. So by the end of the fourth year, they have a practice. They have patients and they have a practice. Mm-hmm. So that's the progression. We also teach flower essences. We teach herbal tinctures. We do quite a lot of self-development work, journey work. So it's quite an eclectic mix, but it's definitely about your journey as the practitioner and how you grow as well, because you are not the person when you leave that you came in. Mm-hmm. You grow it so much. And that's one of the best things of my job, is watching that progression and seeing all that, the good and bad times, because you do have them coming in just going, I can't do this. I don't get this. I mean, we had one of our graduates, Gabby, who is a veteran and is now working with veterans with PTSD. She did it for thesis and she saw veterans, and she's now being funded by Homeopathy UK to see more veterans. And it was really in her fourth years that she suddenly went, oh my God, I get it. She was seeing the remedies work in a different way. And it was, the fourth year was her big light bulb moment where she struggled a bit, and then suddenly, and now she's flying. She's absolutely flying, and she's doing GoFundMe pages because veterans who have been, some of them had been on treatment for 10 years for PTSD and hadn't really improved. And then 4 appointments with homeopathy were sleeping, depression was getting better, relationships being reformed. And they all gave testimonials on her graduation about how fabulous it was. And a lot of them were skeptics. And the wonderful thing about soldiers is they won't take any woo-woo stuff.
Yeah. So when they tell you it works.
It works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was wonderful. So I think you get some people who just right from the start are in it, and other people, it just takes a bit longer. But it's wonderful to see. And that's what drives me forward, because each year is different. Each year brings up a different thing. And one of the things I'm very keen on is that our education doesn't stay stuck in this. We're evolving all the time and looking at new ways of developing it, new ways of making it better and better and better, and evolving in the same way as our students do. So we're constantly changing, which is what makes me excited.
Yeah. And is your teaching mostly online, or is it in person, or a combination?
We did go online in lockdown. It wasn't great, to be honest. We have always had we have a lady in Doha that could come a couple of times a year, but she was all online. We have now more people online, but we do a mixture because actually being together in that energy is really good. So some of our Icelandic students in lockdown came online with us. So that was really good. So we do a mixture now. Some people are online if they can't get into us, but we are in person, because I think there is an energy there that is, I don't want to stop that. So I wouldn't do a totally online course. A mixture is fine, but I do like being with them.
And how do people get hold of your colleges? Or how do they get hold of you if they want to enroll or find out more information?
So we have a website, which is schom.com, and all 3 colleges are on there. And then email me or give me a call. And then I normally have a Zoom chat with somebody and just let them answer all the questions. But what we offer is somebody to come in and sit in, either in person or on Zoom, for a weekend, a day or a weekend, and just see what it's like and talk to the other students, because I think I'm quite persuasive, but I think I could talk anyone round, but I think it's really good if they meet the students and get to hear what it's like and meet the tutors. So people often like to do that, and then they're just really fired up and want to join.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that's what we offer. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to add just about why you think homeopathy is a great career choice, or about homeopathic education, or just anything else to inspire people to get studying?
I think if you are interested in health, yours and anybody else's, and you're interested in people and you want to help, homeopathy really is the way forward, because we're talking about planet-friendly medicine. We're talking about non-toxicity. We're talking about raising your health, your vital force, as we call it. And you can do that all with homeopathy with, no danger. There's no harm with it. And I was told recently that the average 55-year-old is on 4 medications. I mean, that's frightening. And our children are medicated and have Calpol and all the rest of it. And you can do it all naturally. My youngest now is 26 and he's never been to the doctor.
Amazing.
So, I mean, he thinks I'm a bit of a witch sometimes and often doesn't want something. But when he's ill, he will say, Mum, have you got something? And to say that, children are now men, never needed to go to the doctor is quite amazing. And I think that's where we have a place. If I have my leg is broken, I'm going to go to hospital. If there's something, trauma, I'm going to go to the hospital. It has its place. I'm not saying we are alternative, but I would like an integrated. But we have our place with eczema and asthma and hormones and coughs, colds, earaches. It's wonderful. I mean, my children did moan at me that they never had a day off school because of illness. All the other children got a day off school and they never did, because if they had something, they got given remedies and by the morning they were fine and they went to school. I think it's the way forward. And I think, if we're talking about a better planet and health-wise, I think this homeopathy is really the green medicine.
It really is. I think that's something that we don't harp on enough, really, is just how sustainable homeopathy is. If you want to talk about sustainability or green medicine, nothing tops homeopathy. It is literally the greenest, most sustainable medicine on the planet, hands down, no arguments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Now, Mary, we always like to ask our guests at the end of the podcast their 3 favorite homeopathic remedies and why. And I know that can be a really tricky one, but maybe for you, I can put a little bit of spin on that. What are the 3 homeopathic remedies that your students maybe find the most interesting, or the ones that you get the most interesting comments from when you teach the Materia Medica to your students?
Oh, that is a tricky one. I think the meditative provings are really get our students, and we put a stop on them learning it in the first 2 years.
Because it blows your mind, hey?
Yeah. So they learn it from the 3rd year. And in one of those is Budlia, that I use a lot. We used it first in the refugee camps, because for trauma, when we gave Budlia, there was a 14-year-old boy who had travelled by himself from Afghanistan, arrived in Dunkirk in the middle of the night, and being the mother of boys, he really got to me, and his eyes were haunted, and he just sat there with his arms around his legs, and he couldn't speak English, and the interpreter couldn't get the full story, but he was in trauma. And we gave him Budlia 10M, and his eyes, the light went on in his eyes, and he started playing with some of the little children in there where he'd been wrapped up, and it was instantaneous. So that's one of my remedies that I just love.
I've been using Budlia for a while, and actually just another, because I batch record on Fridays, and somebody else today mentioned Budlia. I didn't realize it was a meditative proving. I just assumed they used the plant itself, the butterfly bush itself, to make the remedy from, but it was actually a meditative proving. I
think they're still made from the Budlia, but you just meditate on it rather than the old traditional way. I think it's just a different way of proving it.
Incredible.
I love them, the meditative provings. I do. I think they're like the new age. It's like Medorrhinum americana is Medorrhinum super boosted for the 21st century. So where Medorrhinum might not work, but you see it indicated, you would use Medorrhinum americana, and it just goes ding.
Wow. Okay, I've learned something new today. Thanks.
And it's emerald. There's another one that is the new carcinosin. So it has all the carcinosin, but it does a bit more. So that's where they're really interesting. And I know that our students love them.
Amazing. So we've got Buddleia there and emerald and Medorrhinum.
I would say arsenicum. Yeah, and arsenicum, if we're going to, arsenicum, I think is useful for so many things that it's always by my side, and I can give to people for various things. So yeah, I like arsenicum.
It is such a good one.
Okay. So I wonder, Mary, I know you're also involved with 4-H. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what they do?
Yes. So 4-H is all of the organisations that collectively meet, and we are promoting homeopathy to the general public.
In the UK, though, hey?
In the UK. But there are other 4-Hs. I think there's Australia now have it. I think China or Hong Kong and a few other places have also connected with 4-H. We did it in the start, but they are expanding. And it's about promoting homeopathy to the general public, but also helping practitioners. So for Homeopathy Awareness Week, which is in April, we're doing a lot with practitioners about how homeopathy worked for me, and sending out posters that patients can then write on, take a selfie and send it up to us, so that we can do a big campaign on it. So we do lots of campaigns every year to promote homeopathy. Also, if you have any detractors that write anything, that's the first line that 4-H tries to deal with it. And dealing with the Advertising Standards Authority case, sometimes go after homeopaths for the wording we use, and so it's protecting practitioners. That so it's our registering bodies. I'm a trustee of HAT, which is Homeopathy Action Trust, which is a charitable organisation that helps practitioners and promotes homeopathy to the general public as well. It used to be called Homeopathy Friends about 20 years ago. It's now HAT. So it's a really good organisation, and you can find it on findahomeopath.org. And that also has a list of all homeopaths in the UK that you can, if you're looking for a homeopath, you would go on there, put in your area, and then a list of homeopaths would come up.
Incredible. And 4-H has got an app as well, hey?
It does have an app, and it's wonderful. It's so that you can go in on symptoms and look at what symptoms, and it would come up with a list of remedies, and then you can go on the remedies, and it's a free app. So for people just finding out about homeopathy or just become a new patient, and you can just go on the app and have a look at things. So it's brilliant. It's free
I always
to download.
recommend it to my clients. It's great. It's really good. I've got it on my phone as well. It's very handy.
Yeah, I use it. So it's for everybody. Yeah,
definitely. It's very, very handy. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I am just so hoping that right now there is somebody listening to this podcast that's going to be inspired to get in touch and study homeopathy, because it's the career for the future, and it's the medicine for the future. It's just got all the ticks right there to, have a wonderful career, helping people around the world. You're not limited by your location at all. And it's the one job you will never, ever, ever get bored of.
I totally agree. I always say that. I have a low boredom threshold. It's probably why I do different things.
Yeah.
But I haven't been bored for a second.
I completely agree. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much.